Dear listener, welcome once more to the Hercule Poirot Story Podcast, where the mysteries of the human soul are unravelled amidst the gentle hush of twilight. Tonight, we invite you to settle into your most comfortable armchair, perhaps with a steaming cup of chamomile tea at your side, as we embark upon a tale of subtle deception and quiet revelation. The Last Teacup. As the rain begins to patter against the window panes, we find ourselves drawn into a web of intrigue, where a single teacup holds the key to unravelling a most perplexing crime. Dear listener, should you feel the pull of slumber, allow it to embrace you. Let the voice of mystery guide you into dreams. And if you awaken with questions, do share them in the comments below, for the little grey cells thrive on discourse. Now, let us begin. Chapter 1. The Highland Assembly. In the year of our Lord 1928, amidst the rugged splendour of the Scottish Highlands, Glenmore Castle stood resolute upon a craggy promontory, its weathered stones gazing out over the restless, pewter-hued waters of Loch Morven. The castle, a relic of centuries past, bore the marks of time in its ivy-clad turrets and mullioned windows, which caught the fleeting light of a September gloaming. The air was heavy with the scent of damp heather and the promise of rain, a chill wind whispering through the gnarled pines that fringed the estate. It was a place where the past clung tenaciously to the present, where the echoes of clan feuds and ancient loyalties lingered in the very stones, and where the veneer of civility masked passions as wild as the moors themselves. This was the domain of Sir Archibald McAllister, a man of 64 summers, whose robust frame and grizzled countenance seemed hewn from the same granite as the castle itself. His mane of silver hair swept back from a broad forehead, and his thick, thistly beard lent him the air of a Highland chieftain, though his occupation as a lead and whisky distiller belied a more cunning pursuit, the acquisition of rare antiquities. His collection, comprising Celtic talks, Viking brooches, and manuscripts of dubious provenance, was amassed through dealings that teetered on the edge of propriety, earning him both wealth and whispered enmity. Psychologically, Sir Archibald was a study in Highland pride, imperious, unyielding, with a mind as fortified as his castle, yet blind to the resentments his actions sowed among those nearest him. His sharp blue eyes missed little, save perhaps the treachery brewing beneath his own roof. The occasion was a familial conclave, summoned by Sir Archibald under the pretext of discussing the estate's future, a matter of no small import, given the whispers that the laird's health was waning, and his will, a document of labyrinthine complexity, was soon to be revised. The great hall, where the gathering was to take place, was a cavernous expanse of oak and stone, its walls adorned with tapestries depicting the martial glories of Clan McAllister. A vast hearth blazed with peat, casting flickering shadows that danced like spectres across the flagstones. The air was thick with the aroma of aged wood and the faint smoky tang of whisky, a scent that seemed to permeate the very soul of the castle. Outside, the sky lowered, heavy with clouds that presaged a storm, their brooding presence mirrored by the tension that hung over the assembly. First to arrive was Miss Fiona McAllister, Sir Archibald's niece, a woman of 30, whose lithe form and cascading raven hair suggested a pre-Raphaelite muse. Her emerald eyes, sharp and luminous, betrayed a spirit both poetic and predatory, a duality that manifested in her chosen vocation as an aspiring painter. Fiona's canvases, vivid with the wild hues of the Highlands, were her refuge, yet her ambitions were tethered to the promise of Glenmore Castle itself. Whispers abounded that Sir Archibald intended to bequeath the estate to a distant cousin, a decision that threatened to shatter Fiona's dreams of establishing an artist's retreat within its ancient walls. Her psychological profile was one of restrained intensity. Outwardly ethereal, her delicate features and soft voice cloaked a will of iron, her ambition tempered by a simmering sense of entitlement. As she entered the hall, her silk dress rustling softly, she cast a glance about the room, her smile a fragile mask over calculations unspoken. Next came Dr. Alistair Grant, the family physician, a gaunt figure of 55 whose spectacles perched precariously upon a hawkish nose. His thin lips and sallow complexion suggested a life of ascetic discipline, yet his eyes, darting like minnows in a stream, hinted at secrets tightly guarded. Clad in a sombre frock coat, he moved with the precision of a man accustomed to wielding authority in small doses, his hands clasped behind his back, as if to restrain some inner restlessness. His motive was rooted in professional disgrace. Sir Archibald had uncovered evidence of Grant's illicit prescribing of opiates to wealthy patients, a scandal that threatened to ruin his reputation and livelihood. Psychologically, Grant was a paradox, meticulous in his medical practice, yet prone to rationalizing moral lapses, his calm exterior a dam holding back a torrent of ambition and fear. He nodded curtly to Fiona, his greeting laced with the faintest tremor of unease. The housekeeper, Mrs. Elspeth Dunbar, entered with the quiet authority of one who had served the McAllisters for decades. At 48, she was a stout woman with silver-streaked auburn hair pinned tightly beneath a starched cap, her ruddy cheeks and work-roughened hands testifying to years of unceasing labour. Her eyes, a soft hazel, held a warmth that belied the weight of her secret. Sir Archibald was the father of her illegitimate son, now a grown man struggling in penury, whom the laird had steadfastly refused to acknowledge. This betrayal had carved a deep wound in Elspeth's heart, yet her loyalty to the household remained unshaken, a testament to her resilient spirit. Psychologically, she was a woman of stoic endurance, her maternal devotion cloaked in the guise of dutiful service, her every gesture a balance between deference and suppressed anguish. She set about arranging the tea service with meticulous care, her hands steady despite the turmoil within. Mr. Duncan Kerr, the estate manager, followed, his burly frame filling the doorway like a storm cloud. At 42, his ruddy cheeks and shock of red hair gave him the appearance of a man more suited to the fields than the ledgers, yet his role demanded a keen, if reckless, mind. His eyes, a restless grey, darted about the hall, as if seeking an escape from the debts that hounded him. Kerr had been siphoning funds from the distillery to cover gambling losses, a fact Sir Archibald had begun to suspect, threatening ruin. Psychologically, Kerr was a gambler in both coin and character, impulsive, ever chasing the next windfall, his bluster a shield against the spectre of failure. He clapped his hands jovially as he entered, but the gesture rang hollow, his smile failing to reach his eyes. Lastly, Mr. Lachlan Ross, the gamekeeper, strode in from the mist-soaked moors, his towering form clad in a weathered greatcoat. At 58, his scarred face and limping gait bore the marks of a life spent battling both beast and man. His days as a poacher ended by a wrongful accusation of theft at Sir Archibald's hands years prior. The incident had cost him his standing in the glen, and his motive was one of cold, enduring revenge. His psychological profile was one of rugged stoicism, his grudges nursed like the embers of a long smouldering fire, his loyalty to the land outweighing his disdain for its master. Ross's presence in the hall was an anomaly, his invitation a nod to his long service, Yet his eyes, dark as the loch, betrayed no warmth as he surveyed the gathering. The great table, polished to a mirror-like sheen, was set with an array of fine porcelain, the centerpiece a silver tea urn that gleamed in the firelight. Mrs. Dunbar moved with silent efficiency, pouring steaming Earl Grey into cups adorned with the McAllister crest, the aroma mingling with the faint, peaty scent of Sir Archibald's private whisky blend, a ritual indulgence he permitted at such gatherings. The laird took his place at the head, his presence commanding silence as he surveyed his guests with a gaze that seemed to pierce the very soul. "My kin and keepers," Sir Archibald began, his voice a deep rumble that echoed off the stone walls. "We gather to chart the course of Glenmore's legacy. The world changes, yet the Highlands endure, as shall we." His words carried the weight of proclamation, yet there was a glint in his eye, a hint of irony that suggested more was afoot than mere estate planning. Fiona responded first, her voice soft but edged with defiance. "Uncle, the castle is more than stone. It's a haven for the spirit. Surely its future lies in inspiration, not mere commerce." Her words were a veiled plea, her fingers tightening around her teacup, as if to anchor her resolve. Dr. Grant interjected, his tone measured but strained. "Sir Archibald, your health must be paramount. The strain of such decisions, perhaps a period of rest." The suggestion hung in the air, a subtle challenge to the laird's authority, met with a dismissive wave. "Health, doctor? I've the constitution of an ox," Sir Archibald retorted, his beard bristling. "Your concern is noted, but misplaced." Kerr seized the moment, his voice overly hearty. "The distillery, sir. Booming it is. Naught but prosperity ahead for the clan." His enthusiasm rang false, his hands fidgeting with a pocket watch that seemed to tick too loudly in the quiet. Ross, leaning against a pillar, spoke gruffly. "Prosperity for some, maybe. Others bear scars from old wrongs." His words, blunt as a dirk, drew a sharp glance from Sir Archibald, who chose not to reply. Mrs. Dunbar, ever the silent sentinel, refilled cups with a grace that belied her inner turmoil. The clink of porcelain and the soft hiss of steam filled the pauses, a counterpoint to the rising tension. The storm outside growled closer, the wind rattling the leaded windows as if impatient to join the fray. Sir Archibald raised his teacup, the porcelain delicate in his weathered hand. "To the legacy of Clan McAllister," he declared, his voice resonant with finality. The others followed suit, their cups lifted in a toast that felt more like a challenge than a celebration. Little did they know, this act would mark the beginning of a tragedy that would shake the very foundations of Glenmore Castle. As the laird sipped, his eyes scanned the faces around him, unaware that one among them harboured a motive dark enough to snuff out his formidable light. The stage was set, the players assembled, and the first threads of a deadly tapestry were about to be woven in the shadow of the Highlands' eternal mists. Chapter 2. The Poisoned Chalice. The great hall of Glenmore Castle, bathed in the amber glow of candlelight, seemed to hold its breath as the assembled company raised their teacups in Sir Archibald McAllister's toast. The air was laden with the rich, bergamot-tinged aroma of Earl Grey, interwoven with the peaty undertones of the laird's private whisky blend, a ritual indulgence that lent an air of solemnity to the gathering. Outside, the Highland storm gathered strength, its low growl reverberating through the ancient stones, the wind clawing at the leaded windows as if seeking entry to the drama unfolding within. The tapestries, depicting the martial triumphs of Clan McAllister, hung heavy with the weight of history, their faded threads a silent witness to the tensions that simmered beneath the surface of this familial conclave. Sir Archibald, seated at the head of the oaken table, dominated the hall with his imposing presence. His grizzled beard and piercing blue eyes commanded attention, his robust frame a testament to a life spent mastering both the wild moors and the intricate dealings of his antiquities trade. At 64, he was a man of unyielding resolve, his psychological makeup a fortress of Highland pride, impervious to remorse, yet vulnerable to the resentments he had sown. His fingers, calloused from years of handling relics and ledgers, traced the rim of his porcelain teacup, a delicate vessel adorned with the clan's crest, as he surveyed his guests with a gaze that seemed to dissect their very souls. Miss Fiona McAllister, his niece, sat to his right, her raven hair catching the firelight like polished obsidian. Her emerald eyes, sharp with unspoken ambition, flickered with a mixture of deference and defiance as she met her uncle's gaze. At 30, Fiona's lithe form and poetic air belied a predatory streak, her aspiration to transform Glenmore into an artist's sanctuary, clashing with Sir Archibald's pragmatic designs. Her psychological profile was one of restrained intensity, her artistic soul a veneer for a will as unyielding as the castle's stones, her motive rooted in the fear that her inheritance might slip through her fingers like the mist over Loch Morven. Dr. Alistair Grant, the family physician, occupied the seat opposite, his gaunt frame and hawkish features accentuated by the flickering shadows. His spectacles glinted as he adjusted them, a nervous habit that betrayed the calculated reserve of a man whose livelihood teetered on the edge of ruin. At 55, Grant's sallow complexion and thin lips spoke of a life of ascetic discipline, yet his darting eyes hinted at secrets tightly guarded. His motive was professional disgrace. Sir Archibald's discovery of his illicit opiate prescriptions threatened to unravel his reputation. Psychologically, Grant was a paradox, his meticulous nature at odds with his moral lapses, his calm exterior a dam holding back a torrent of fear and ambition. Mrs. Elspeth Dunbar, the housekeeper, moved with quiet efficiency, her stout figure a constant presence as she tended to the tea service. At 48, her silver-streaked auburn hair and ruddy cheeks bespoke years of unceasing labour, her hazel eyes warm yet shadowed by a profound betrayal. Her secret, that Sir Archibald was the father of her illegitimate son, now destitute and unacknowledged, drove her motive, a wound that festered beneath her stoic loyalty. Psychologically, she was a woman of enduring resilience, her maternal devotion cloaked in the guise of duty, her every gesture a delicate balance between deference and suppressed anguish. Mr. Duncan Kerr, the estate manager, sat with a forced joviality, his burly frame straining against his tweed jacket. At 42, his ruddy cheeks and shock of red hair gave him the air of a man more at home in the fields than the office. Yet his role demanded a cunning that his reckless nature often undermined. His grey eyes, restless as the loch's surface, betrayed his motive. The embezzlement of distillery funds to cover gambling debts, a secret Sir Archibald was beginning to unravel. Psychologically, Kerr was a gambler in both coin and character, his bluster a shield against the spectre of failure, his impulsiveness a constant threat to his own schemes. Mr. Lachlan Ross, the gamekeeper, stood apart, his towering form leaning against a pillar near the hearth. At 58, his scarred face and limping gait bore the marks of a life spent battling the elements and old enemies, his weathered greatcoat damp from the moorland mist. His motive was revenge, rooted in a wrongful accusation of theft years prior. which had cost him his standing in the glen. Psychologically, Ross was a man of rugged stoicism, his grudges nursed like the embers of a long smouldering fire, his loyalty to the land outweighing his disdain for its master. The conversation, though cloaked in civility, crackled with undercurrents of discord. Sir Archibald's voice, resonant as a clan war horn, cut through the murmurs. "My kin and keepers," he began, his tone laced with irony. "We gather to secure Glenmore's legacy. The Highlands endure, as shall we, but not without hard truths." His words hung in the air, a challenge to the assembled, each of whom harboured motives that twisted like the roots of the ancient pines outside. Fiona responded first, her voice soft, but edged with steel. "Uncle, Glenmore is more than a ledger's tally. It's a sanctuary for the soul. Its future lies in inspiration, not mere commerce." Her fingers tightened around her teacup, the porcelain trembling slightly, as if mirroring her barely contained frustration. Dr. Grant cleared his throat, his tone measured but strained. "Sir Archibald, your health must be considered. The strain of such decisions, perhaps a period of repose." His suggestion was a veiled probe, met with a dismissive snort from the laird. "Health, doctor? I've the vigour of a stag," Sir Archibald retorted, his beard bristling. "Your concern is noted, but it's your own follies that warrant scrutiny." The barb landed, Grant's spectacles glinting as he adjusted them, his composure fraying at the edges. Kerr seized the moment, his voice overly hearty. "The distillery's thriving, sir. Prosperity's assured. Naught to fret over." His hands fidgeted with a pocket watch, its ticking a nervous counterpoint to his bluster, his eyes avoiding the laird's piercing gaze. Ross, from his shadowed corner, spoke gruffly. "Prosperity for some, maybe. Others bear the scars of old wrongs." His words, blunt as a dirk, drew a sharp glance from Sir Archibald, who chose to let the comment pass, though his jaw tightened imperceptibly. Mrs. Dunbar, her hand steady despite the turmoil within, refilled cups with a grace that belied her inner conflict. The clink of porcelain and the soft hiss of steam filled the pauses, a counterpoint to the rising tension. The storm outside intensified, the wind rattling the windows with a ferocity that seemed to echo the gathering's unease. As the grandfather clock in the hall's corner tolled 4, its chimes resonant and mournful, Sir Archibald raised his teacup, the porcelain delicate in his weathered hand. "To the truths we unveil," he declared, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to challenge the storm itself. The others followed suit, their cups lifted in a toast that felt more like a gauntlet thrown than a celebration. Fiona's eyes flickered with defiance, Grant's with unease, Kerr's with false bravado, Ross's with cold indifference, and Dunbar's with a sorrow too deep for words. Sir Archibald brought the cup to his lips, inhaling the steam with a contented sigh, the aroma of Earl Grey masking a subtler, more sinister note. He sipped deeply, his throat working as he savoured the blend, unaware that this simple act would be his last. Moments passed in silence, the hall's tension broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of the wind. Then, abruptly, Sir Archibald's face contorted, his hand clutching at his collar as a gasp escaped his lips. The teacup slipped from his grasp, shattering upon the flagstones with a sound like a gunshot, its contents spilling in a dark pool that glistened in the firelight. A cry tore from Fiona's throat, sharp and piercing, as she leapt to her feet. "Uncle!" she shrieked, her hands fluttering helplessly. Grant, with a physician's instinct, rushed to the laird's side, his fingers probing for a pulse as Sir Archibald's body convulsed, his eyes wide with agony. Kerr swore loudly, his bluster crumbling into panic, while Ross remained motionless, his scarred face unreadable. Mrs. Dunbar stood frozen, her tray clattering to the table, her eyes wide with horror as the man who had shaped her life and her son's slumped lifeless in his chair. The method of death was arsenic, a poison as insidious as the Highland mist, administered through the teacup, its bitterness concealed by the robust tea and whiskey blend. The metallic tang lingered faintly in the air, unnoticed amidst the chaos. Fiona's sobs filled the hall, Grant's futile ministrations a grim pantomime, Kerr's oaths a jarring counterpoint. Ross's silence spoke louder than words, while Dunbar's trembling hands betrayed her inner torment. The storm outside broke with a vengeance, rain lashing the windows like tears from the heavens, as the great hall of Glenmore Castle became a stage for tragedy. The laird was dead, his legacy now a question mark, and the seeds of suspicion took root among those who had shared his final toast. The shattered teacup, its fragments scattered like the pieces of a puzzle, held the key to a mystery that would demand the keenest of minds to unravel. As the wind howled and the fire sputtered, the stage was set for a drama of deception, where every glance, every word, and every silence would be a clue in the shadow of the Highlands' eternal miss. Chapter 3. The Belgians' Dessin, the great hall of Glenmore Castle, its air still heavy with the acrid residue of tragedy, stood as a sombre monument to the abrupt demise of Sir Archibald McAllister. The peat fire in the vast hearth flickered fitfully, casting long shadows that writhed across the tapestries of Clan McAllister's storied past, as if the ancestors themselves recoiled from the scene. Outside, the Highland storm raged unabated, its torrential rain lashing the ancient windows, the wind's mournful wail a counterpoint to the stunned silence within. The shattered remnants of Sir Archibald's teacup lay scattered upon the flagstones, their delicate porcelain edges glinting in the candlelight, a mute testament to the poison that had claimed the laird's life. The faint metallic tang of arsenic lingered in the air, a ghostly whisper of treachery that seemed to permeate the very stones of the castle. Word of the calamity had spread swiftly through the glen, carried on the wings of rumour as surely as the storm's gusts. By dusk, the local constabulary had been summoned, and with them arrived a figure whose presence seemed incongruous amidst the rugged grandeur of the Highlands. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective, renowned across Europe for his unparalleled acumen. Poirot, on a rare sabbatical in Edinburgh, had been persuaded to lend his expertise by Inspector Macpherson, a bluff Highlander whose burly frame and weathered face bespoke years of grappling with the lawlessness of the moors. Macpherson's eyes, sharp beneath bushy brows, betrayed a grudging respect as he ushered Poirot into the hall, the detective's patent leather shoes clicking softly on the flagstones. Poirot's appearance was a study in precision, his egg-shaped head crowned with sleek, dark hair, his meticulously waxed moustaches curling with fastidious symmetry, his tailored suit an oasis of urbanity in the wilds of Scotland. At middle age, his stature was unassuming, yet his presence commanded attention, his obsidian eyes gleaming with an intellect that dissected human folly with surgical finesse. Psychologically, Poirot was a maestro of order, his little grey cells attuned to the subtlest discord in the symphony of human behaviour, his obsession with symmetry a bulwark against the chaos of crime. "Inspector," he murmured in his melodious, accented English, "a poisoning in a teacup in the heart of the Highlands. Most piquant. The Scots, they cherish their tea, no? Yet it seems this cup concealed a vendetta most sinister." Macpherson nodded, his voice gruff. "Aye, Monsieur Poirot. The doctor confirms arsenic. Nasty stuff. Natural causes it ain't. Your reputation precedes ye, and we're grateful you've come. He gestured toward the scene where Sir Archibald's body had been, covered with a tartan blanket, the grim tableau surrounded by the stunned assembly of suspects. Poirot's gaze swept the hall, noting the details with the precision of a watchmaker. The shattered teacup, its fragments radiating outward like a starburst. A faint metallic odour clinging to the air. Muddy footprints near the scullery door, smudged and overlapping in the damp chaos of the storm. A single glove, black and worn, lay discarded near the hearth, its presence jarring amidst the meticulous order of Mrs. Dunbar's tea service. The detective's lips twitched beneath his moustache, a sign that his grey cells were already at work, weaving the threads of evidence into a tapestry of possibility. He began his interrogations with Miss Fiona McAllister, whose raven hair and emerald eyes were now framed by a pallor of shock. She sat rigidly, her silk dress creased from her earlier collapse, her hands clasped tightly to still their trembling. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice soft but steady. Uncle was stern, aye, but who could harbour such malice? He was the heart of Glenmore. Her words carried the cadence of sincerity, yet Poirot noted a psychological clue. The faint tightening of her lips, a flicker of calculation beneath her grief. Her motive, fear of disinheritance, loomed large, but her composure suggested a mind accustomed to masking its depths. Dr. Alistair Grant stood next, his gaunt frame rigid with professional decorum, though his spectacles slipped slightly as he adjusted them, a nervous tic that betrayed his unease. "I examined him immediately," he said, his voice clipped. "Convulsions, respiratory failure, classic signs, but I thought it a seizure at first. Poison? Unthinkable." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the doctor's evasive glance, a psychological tell of a man guarding secrets. Grant's motive, professional disgrace from illicit prescriptions, was a shadow that darkened his every word, his meticulous nature at odds with the panic lurking in his eyes. Mrs. Elspeth Dunbar, the housekeeper, hovered near the tea urn, her stout figure a pillar of stoic duty despite the horror that had unfolded. Her hazel eyes, usually warm, were clouded with sorrow as she spoke. "I brewed the tea as always, sir. Earl Grey, with a dash of the laird's whisky. Naught amiss, I swear." Her hands, roughened by years of service, trembled slightly as she smoothed her apron, a gesture Poirot noted as a sign of suppressed anguish. Her motive, the unacknowledged son, cast a long shadow, yet her loyalty seemed unshaken, a paradox that intrigued the detective. Mr. Duncan Kerr, the estate manager, blustered forward, his ruddy cheeks flushed with agitation. "I saw naught amiss, monsieur. We were all here toasting the clan's future. Poison, preposterous." His grey eyes darted to the shattered cup, his hands fidgeting with his pocket watch, its ticking a nervous pulse in the quiet. Poirot noted a timeline. Inconsistency. Kerr claimed to have been at the table the entire time, yet his boots bore fresh mud, suggesting a recent foray outside. His motive, embezzlement, made him a man desperate to avoid scrutiny, his bluster a fragile shield. Mr. Lachlan Ross, the gamekeeper, remained in the shadows, his scarred face impassive as he leaned against the pillar. "Justice comes in many forms," he growled, his voice low and resonant. "But poison's a coward's way. I'd face a man square." His dark eyes met Poirot's without flinching, a psychological clue of stoic defiance. Yet his motive, revenge for a past wrong, burned like a slow fuse. His weathered greatcoat was damp, but the footprints near the scullery did not match his heavy boots, a red herring that Poirot filed away for later consideration. The detective moved to the scene of the crime, crouching beside the shattered teacup with the grace of a cat. He inhaled deeply, confirming the metallic tang of arsenic, its presence a silent accusation. The fragments of porcelain revealed no fingerprints, but a faint smudge on one shard suggested a gloved hand, a clue that pointed to premeditation. The muddy footprints near the scullery door, smudged and chaotic, hinted at a hurried exit or entry, though the storm's deluge had blurred their edges. The discarded glove, black and worn, bore traces of peat ash, suggesting it had been near the hearth, yet its owner remained elusive. Poirot's mind whirred, his grey cells sorting through the cacophony of clues and misdirection. A red herring emerged in the form of a crumpled note found beneath the table, its scrawled words hinting at blackmail, repay or be exposed. It bore no signature, but its presence suggested a motive beyond those already suspected, a distraction that Poirot dismissed as too convenient. Another inconsistency gnawed at him. Fiona claimed to have been in the powder room at 3:45, preparing for the toast, yet Kerr swore he saw her lingering near the tea urn at that precise moment, her silk dress brushing the table. The discrepancy was subtle but significant, a thread to be tugged later. The detective rose, dusting his hands with a fastidious flick, his eyes scanning the suspects once more. Fiona's delicate handkerchief, stained with what might be tears or something more sinister, lay crumpled in her lap. Grant's spectacles slipped again, his fingers twitching as he adjusted them. Dunbar's apron bore a faint smear of soot, perhaps from tending the fire, though her duties rarely brought her near the hearth during tea. Kerr's watch ticked too loudly, its hands suspiciously slow, suggesting tampering to skew the timeline. Ross's stoic silence was a fortress, but his scarred hands clenched briefly, a flicker of unrest. "Mes amis," Poirot said softly, his voice cutting through the hall's oppressive silence. "A crime has been committed, most heinous, yet the truth lies not in the chaos, but in the order beneath. The little grey cells, they observe, they deduce. The poison was in the cup, oui, but the hand that placed it, that is the question." His words hung in the air, a challenge to the guilty, a balm to the innocent. As the storm battered Glenmore Castle, Poirot's presence was a beacon of clarity amidst the fog of suspicion. The suspects, each nursing their secrets, watched him warily, unaware that his meticulous mind was already weaving their lies and truths into a pattern only he could discern. The shattered teacup, the muddy footprints, the misplaced glove, these were but the opening notes of a symphony of deduction, and Hercule Poirot was its conductor, poised to unravel the mystery of the last teacup in the shadow of the Highlands' eternal mists. Chapter 4. Vales of the Moor. As twilight descended upon Glenmore Castle, the Highland storm wove a shroud of mist and rain about its ancient stones, transforming the rugged landscape into a realm of shadows and whispers. The great hall, where Sir Archibald McAllister had met his untimely end, now lay silent, save for the crackle of the peat fire and the relentless drumming of rain against the leaded windows. The air within was heavy with the lingering scent of Earl Grey and arsenic, a bitter reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded mere hours before. Outside, the moors stretched endlessly, their heather-clad expanse cloaked in a fog that seemed to mirror the obfuscation of truth within the castle's walls. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective, stood at the heart of this enigma, his obsidian eyes gleaming with the quiet intensity of a mind in pursuit of order amidst chaos. The hall's tapestries, depicting the martial glories of Clan McAllister, seemed to watch over the scene with stern disapproval, their faded threads bearing witness to a new chapter of betrayal. Poirot, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the rugged surroundings, moved with the precision of a metronome, his patent leather shoes silent on the flagstones. His egg-shaped head tilted slightly as he surveyed the remnants of the fatal tea service. The shattered teacup, its porcelain fragments scattered like a broken constellation. The silver urn, now cold, and the faint smudge of a gloved hand on a shard, a clue that whispered of premeditation. The muddy footprints near the scullery door, blurred by the storm's deluge, hinted at a hurried passage, while the discarded glove by the hearth remained an enigma, its peat-stained leather suggesting a connection to the fire, yet defying easy attribution. Poirot's little grey cells, ever attuned to the subtlest discord, churned with the possibilities presented by the suspects, each a thread in the intricate tapestry of motive and opportunity. Miss Fiona McAllister, with her raven hair and emerald eyes, sat in a corner, her silk dress creased from the day's turmoil, her delicate features masking a predatory ambition. Her motive, fear of disinheritance, cast a long shadow, yet her composure suggested a mind capable of calculated deception. Dr. Alistair Grant, the gaunt physician, hovered near the hearth, his spectacles slipping as he adjusted them, his sallow face betraying the strain of a man whose professional disgrace loomed large. Mrs. Elspeth Dunbar, the stout housekeeper, busied herself tidying the tea service, her hazel eyes clouded with sorrow, her secret son a wound that drove her motive, yet seemed at odds with her stoic loyalty. Mr. Duncan Kerr, the burly estate manager, paced restlessly, his ruddy cheeks flushed with agitation, his embezzlement a desperate secret teetering on exposure. Mr. Lachlan Ross, the weathered gamekeeper, stood apart, his scarred face impassive, his revenge for a past wrong a smouldering ember that refused to ignite into overt action. Determined to unravel the threads of this mystery, Poirot ventured into the storm-swept moors, the heather brushing against his boots as the drizzle dampened his meticulously groomed moustache. The air was redolent with the earthy tang of wet peat and the faint sweetness of fading gorse, a stark contrast to the stifling tension within the castle. He encountered Lachlan Ross near a weathered fence, the gamekeeper's massive frame bent to the task of mending a post, his greatcoat glistening with rain. "Monsieur Ross," Poirot began, his voice soft yet piercing, "your grudge against Sir Archibald, it festers, non? A wrong from years past, a theft you did not commit. Such injustice might drive a man to desperate measures." Ross's scarred face twisted in a grimace, his dark eyes meeting Poirot's without flinching. "I, the laird, wronged me," he growled, his voice low as the storm's rumble. "Cost me my name in the glen, but poison, that's a coward's way. If I'd sought justice, it'd be with a dirk, face to face." His words carried the weight of truth, his psychological profile one of rugged stoicism, his grudges nurtured like the roots of the moor's ancient pines. Poirot noted a red herring, a set of footprints leading toward Loch Morvin, their edges softened by the rain, suggesting an attempt to dispose of evidence. Yet the prints, shallow and uneven, matched none of the suspect's boots, a misdirection that Poirot filed away as too convenient. Returning to the castle, Poirot sought out Mrs. Dunbar in the scullery, where she scrubbed the tea urn with a fervour that bordered on obsession. Her stout frame was taut with suppressed emotion, her silver-streaked auburn hair escaping its cap in wisps. Madame Dunbar, Poirot said gently. Your service to the McAllisters is exemplary, yet your heart carries a burden. A son, unacknowledged by the laird. Such pain might lead to thoughts of retribution, no? Her hazel eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing her ruddy face before she composed herself. Nay, sir, she murmured, her hands trembling slightly. He denied my bairn, but murder, I'd not stain my soul so. Her loyalty, Poirot noted, was a fortress, yet her anguish was a psychological clue, her maternal devotion a motive tempered by restraint. In the library, a dimly lit sanctum of leather-bound tomes and flickering candles, Poirot perused Sir Archibald's correspondence, his gloved fingers tracing the edges of letters that revealed a web of motives. A codicil to the laird's will, dated mere weeks ago, threatened to disinherit Fiona in favour of a distant cousin, her dreams of an artist's retreat crumbling like the castle's ancient mortar. A ledger entry, scrawled in Sir Archibald's bold hand, hinted at Kerr's embezzlement, the sums siphoned from the distillery, a desperate bid to cover gambling debts. A letter to Dr. Grant, terse and accusatory, demanded an explanation for forged prescriptions, threatening exposure that would ruin the physician's career. Each document was a thread in the tapestry of betrayal, each suspect a knot to be untangled. Poirot's attention turned to a physical clue, a scrap of fabric caught on the tea-urn's handle, its coarse weave matching Mrs. Dunbar's apron. Yet the discovery proved a red herring, as her duties required constant handling of the urn, and the fabric bore no trace of arsenic. A more telling inconsistency emerged in the timeline. Dr. Grant's watch, a silver pocket piece, lagged by 5 minutes, suggesting he had been elsewhere during the critical moments before the toast. When questioned, Grant claimed to have been adjusting his medical bag in the anteroom at 3:50. Yet Kerr swore he saw the doctor near the tea table at that time, his spectacles glinting in the candlelight. The discrepancy was subtle but significant, a crack in the physician's meticulous facade. Fiona, when confronted in the conservatory amidst wilting ferns, deflected with poetic grace. Monsieur Poirot, my handkerchief. It's stained with ink, not poison, she said, her emerald eyes wide with feigned innocence. I was sketching by the lock this morning, nothing more. Her alibi, however, faltered under scrutiny. A sketchbook in her room showed no fresh drawings, and her psychological profile, ambition cloaked in artistry, suggested a mind capable of weaving intricate lies. Yet her motive, while compelling, lacked the immediacy of others, a thread that Poirot held loosely for now. Kerr, cornered in the distillery, blustered through his interrogation, his ruddy cheeks flushed with sweat. I was at the table, monsieur, the whole time. No chance to tamper with aught. His boots, however, bore fresh mud, and a ledger discrepancy confirmed Sir Archibald's suspicions of embezzlement, a motive that pressed heavily on Kerr's impulsive nature. His watch, too, was suspect, its hands aligned too perfectly with the hall's clock, suggesting tampering to fabricate an alibi. Ross, when pressed, admitted to finding a vial in the distillery, its label faded but suggestive of poison. Thought it was rat bait, he grunted, his stoicism unshaken. The vial, however, was empty, another red herring planted to divert suspicion. Poirot's grey cells whirred, passing the psychological clues. Fiona's calculated poise, Grant's evasive precision, Dunbar's suppressed anguish, Kerr's desperate bluster, Ross's smouldering restraint. Each suspect was a study in human frailty, their motives, inheritance, disgrace, betrayal, debt, revenge, interwoven like the heather on the moors. As night deepened, the storm's fury abated to a gentle drizzle, the mist curling about the castle like a lover's caress. Poirot stood by a window, his reflection a silhouette against the glass, his mind a crucible of deduction. The footprints, the glove, the fabric scrap. These were but surface ripples, concealing deeper currents of intent. The arsenic, he reasoned, had been administered post-brewing, slipped into the teacup by one familiar with Sir Archibald's habit of savouring his tea with a slow, deliberate sip. The timeline inconsistencies, Grant's lagging watch, Fiona's disputed whereabouts, pointed to a narrow window of opportunity, a moment of distraction amidst the toast preparations. A psychological clue emerged in Dunbar's trembling hands, not from guilt, but from the weight of her secret, her loyalty a shield against despair. Kerr's bluster, too, was a facade, his desperation a louder motive than Ross's quiet grudge. Fiona's artistry masked a cunning that could not be dismissed, while Grant's precision suggested a mind capable of cold calculation. The glove, Poirot noted, bore no arsenic residue, yet its placement near the hearth suggested a deliberate act, a misdirection to implicate one who tended the fire. Perhaps Dunbar, whose duties rarely extended there. The detective's lips twitched beneath his moustache, a sign that the symphony of clues was nearing its crescendo. The truth, he knew, lay not in the chaos of the storm, but in the order beneath, a pattern only his grey cells could discern. As the castle settled into an uneasy slumber, Poirot prepared to tighten the web, each suspect a thread to be tested, each clue a note in the melody of justice that would soon resound through the halls of Glenmore. Chapter 5. The Unveiling. The great hall of Glenmore Castle, bathed in the flickering torchlight of a Highland night, stood as a solemn arena where the threads of treachery were about to be unravelled. The storm that had raged without had softened to a mournful drizzle, its gentle patter against the leaded windows a counterpoint to the taut silence within. The peat fire in the vast hearth cast long shadows across the tapestries of Clan McAllister, their woven warriors seeming to lean forward, as if eager to witness the denouement of this grim drama. The air, still tinged with the faint metallic echo of arsenic, carried the weight of secrets poised to be laid bare. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective, stood at the centre of the hall, his egg-shaped head tilted slightly, his waxed moustaches gleaming with fastidious symmetry, his obsidian eyes alight with the serene certainty of a mind that had orchestrated order from chaos. The suspects, summoned once more to the oaken table where Sir Archibald McAllister had met his end, sat in a semicircle of unease. Miss Fiona McAllister, her raven hair framing a face pale with apprehension, clutched a handkerchief stained with what she claimed was ink, her emerald eyes darting with the wariness of a cornered doe. Dr. Alistair Grant, the gaunt physician, adjusted his spectacles with trembling fingers, his sallow complexion betraying the strain of a man whose secrets teetered on exposure. Mrs. Elspeth Dunbar, the stout housekeeper, stood rigidly by the tea urn, her hazel eyes clouded with sorrow, her silver-streaked auburn hair escaping its cap in wisps of defiance. Mr. Duncan Kerr, the burly estate manager, fidgeted with his pocket watch, its ticking a nervous pulse in the quiet, his ruddy cheeks flushed with the desperation of a gambler facing ruin. Mr. Lachlan Ross, the weathered gamekeeper, leaned against a pillar, his scarred face impassive, his dark eyes fixed on Poirot with the stoic indifference of a man accustomed to the Moor's harsh judgments. Poirot's presence, though unassuming in stature, commanded the hall with the authority of intellect his tailored suit, pristine despite the damp Highland air, and his patent leather shoes, polished to a mirror sheen, were a testament to his obsession with order, a bulwark against the disorder of crime. Psychologically, he was a maestro of the human psyche, his little grey cells attuned to the subtlest dissonances in behaviour, his method a symphony of deduction that sought harmony in the cacophony of motive and opportunity. "Mes amis," he began, his voice a silken thread cutting through the tension. "A crime most heinous has been committed in this ancient hall. The laird, Sir Archibald, was struck down by arsenic. A poison slipped into his teacup with a precision that speaks of intimacy and intent. But the hand that wielded this weapon? That we shall now unveil." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes sweeping the assembly. "The clues, they are many, yet they converge upon a single truth. The shattered teacup, its fragments bearing the smudge of a gloved hand, the muddy footprints near the scullery blurred by the storm, the discarded glove by the hearth stained with peat ash, the timeline riddled with inconsistencies. These are the notes of our symphony, and the little grey cells have conducted them to their finale." Poirot turned first to Fiona, his gaze gentle but piercing. "Mademoiselle Fiona, your motive is clear. Fear of disinheritance, a castle that was to be your sanctuary, snatched away by a codicil. Your handkerchief, stained with what you claim is ink, was found near the tea urn. Yet your alibi falters. You were not in the powder room at 3:45, as you claimed, for Monsieur Kerr saw you by the table. A lie, perhaps, to conceal a darker act?" Fiona's lips parted in protest, her voice trembling. "Monsieur Poirot, I loved my uncle, despite his threats. The stain is ink, I swear it. I was sketching, nothing more." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "The grey cells, they note your passion, but also your cunning. Yet the poison required a steadier hand." He pivoted to Dr. Grant, whose spectacles slipped as he met the detective's gaze. "Doctor, your motive is most pressing. Professional ruin, the exposure of your illicit prescriptions. Your watch, it lags by 5 minutes, suggesting you were elsewhere when the tea was poured. You claim to be in the anteroom, yet Kerr places you near the urn at 3:50, and the glove by the hearth, its size matches your slender hands, non?" Grant's face blanched, his voice sharp with denial. "Absurd. I was tending my bag, not poisoning anyone. The glove is not mine." Poirot's lips twitched. "Your precision, doctor, is your strength and your weakness. The grey cells observe your unease." Mrs. Dunbar, her hands clasped tightly, flinched as Poirot addressed her. "Madame, your secret son, denied by the laird, is a wound most profound. Your apron bore a scrap of fabric near the urn, and your hands trembled when you spoke of the tea. Yet your loyalty is a fortress. Would you breach it for revenge?" Dunbar's hazel eyes welled with tears, her voice low. "Nay, sir. I served the laird, despite my pain. I'd not poison him." Poirot nodded, his tone softening. "Your heart speaks truth, madame. The fabric is a red herring. Your duty's too routine to conceal such a deed." Kerr, his ruddy cheeks flushed with sweat, bristled as Poirot turned to him. "Monsieur Kerr, your embezzlement of distillery funds was a secret Sir Archibald uncovered. Your boots, muddy from the storm, suggest a foray outside, perhaps to retrieve the poison. Your watch, suspiciously aligned, hints at tampering to secure an alibi. A desperate man, non?" Kerr's voice boomed, his bluster a fragile shield. "I was here, monsieur. No time for such nonsense. The mud's from checking the stables." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Desperation. It drives many a rash act. The grey cells, they do not dismiss you lightly. Finally, Poirot faced Ross, whose scarred face remained a mask of stoicism. Monsieur Ross, your grudge against Sir Archibald for a theft you did not commit burns like the peat in this hearth. The vial in the distillery, you found it, oui? Yet you claim it was rat bait. Your footprints do not match those by the scullery, but your silence speaks volumes. Ross's voice was a low growl. I've no love for the laird, but poison's not my way. I'd face him square. Poirot inclined his head. Your honour, it is a beacon, yet grudges linger long in the Highlands. The detective paused, letting the silence settle, the drizzle outside a soft underscore to his words. The arsenic, it was placed in the teacup after the tea was poured, by one who knew Sir Archibald's habit of savouring his blend with a slow sip. The glove, the footprints, the timeline, these are misdirections, yet they point to a truth. A red herring, the crumpled note of blackmail suggests a motive beyond our suspects, but it is too convenient, no? The true clue lies in the psychology, the one whose calm conceals calculation. Poirot's gaze settled on Dr. Grant, whose spectacles slipped once more, his fingers frozen mid-adjustment. Doctor, it is you who orchestrated this crime. Your motive, exposure of your prescriptions, threatened ruin. You tampered with the teacup during your pretext of examining Sir Archibald's health, moments before the toast. The glove, discarded by the hearth, bears the faint scent of your antiseptic, a trace you could not erase. The vial in the distillery, planted to implicate Kerr, was your misdirection. The footprints? Yours, from a hasty errand to retrieve the arsenic, masked by the storm. Your watch, lagging, gave you the window to act, while Kerr's sighting of you by the urn seals your guilt. Grant's face crumpled, his voice a hoarse whisper. He would have destroyed me, my practice, my life. I had no choice. His confession hung in the air, a raw admission that shattered the hall's tension. Fiona gasped, her handkerchief falling to the floor. Dunbar's shoulders sagged, relief mingling with sorrow. Kerr's bluster faded to stunned silence, while Ross's eyes narrowed, a grudging nod acknowledging Poirot's triumph. Inspector Macpherson, who had stood silently by, stepped forward, his burly frame looming as he clapped handcuffs on Grant. Well done, Monsieur Poirot. You've a devilish mind for this. The physician was led away, his spectacles glinting one last time in the torchlight, a fallen figure in the castle's ancient drama. Poirot turned to the others, his voice gentle but resolute. Mes amis, the harmony of Glenmore is restored, though at a cost. Mademoiselle Fiona, your inheritance is secure, your dreams intact. Madame Dunbar, your loyalty is your redemption. Monsieur Kerr, your debts must be faced but not with blood. Monsieur Ross, your honour prevails. The little grey cells, they triumph where chaos reigns. As the drizzle softened to a whisper, the castle seemed to exhale, its stones settling into a quieter vigil. Poirot adjusted his tie, a final gesture of order, his moustache twitching with satisfaction. Slumber peacefully, dear listener, he murmured, as if addressing an unseen audience beyond the hall, in the knowledge that justice, like the Highlands, endures. The fire crackled softly, the tapestries bore silent witness, and the mystery of the last teacup was laid to rest in the shadow of Glenmore's eternal miss.